Our show is now on Stitcher. Listen to us on your iPhone, Android phone, Kindle Fire, and other devices with Stitcher. Stitcher is smart radio for your phone. Find it in your App Store or on Stitcher.com. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio.
Pray with me if you will. Come, Holy Spirit, come. Come with the fire and burn. Come with the rain and cleanse. Come with the wind and breathe. Come with the light and reveal. Convict us, convert us, consecrate us. Claim and call us with your care and concern, O God, until we do something. Amen. The background of this text comes from Dr. Fred Craddock, Professor Emeritus of Preaching and New Testament at Candler Theological School on the campus of Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. With the circle of 12 reconstituted through the selection of Matthias, which we're told in the first chapter of Acts, the nucleus of the newly constituted Messianic community is in place. The time is now right for it to be legitimated. And this is done through a divine sign, of which there are many listed in Luke, Acts. Doubly forceful since it is both audible and visible. The prophetic words cited from Joel and attributed to Peter are programmatic not only for the structuring of the Pentecost story as Luke narrates it, but for what follows in the rest of the book of Acts. The opening words of Joel's prophecy have been altered to appropriate fully the prophetic message for Christian readers who are living in, quote, unquote, in the last days, the final period of salvation history. As God's Spirit has been poured out previously in times of rebirth and renewal, so now the birth of the newly constituted Messianic community receives divine inbreathing and legitimation in a similar fashion. Prophetic message is programmatic. Major themes which are unfolded and developed on a grand literary scale in Luke Acts are articulated here. The new age as seen in which God's Spirit generates new life, new expectations, but especially as it launches the rebirth of the prophetic witness. It was widely held that the voice of the prophets had been silenced. That's from 1 Maccabees 4 through 46. With the coming of the Messiah, Jesus, however, a new prophet, and we are told, emerges in Acts 3, 23, 7, and also in chapter 7, 37. Not only does Luke, throughout the gospel, especially portray Jesus as God's prophet, this is in Luke chapter 4, 18 and 19, and also in 4, 24 through 30. He also portrays the main characters of the formative years of the church as prophetic figures, most notably here, Peter, who stands as the witness to the apostolic church. And then Paul is also in this place in Acts 13 through 28. Both are prompted and directed by the Spirit in their words and actions. The gradual spread of the Messianic movement, accordingly, is attested by signs and wonders recorded many times in the book of Acts. Furthermore, the Spirit is promised to all. The text actually says to all flesh in verse 17. The apocalyptic imagery is thought to be a reference to the crucifixion. The wind and fire imagery of Pentecost are also seen as a fulfillment of the prophet Joel's words. So it's a birthday celebration for the church. It's appropriate that it comes on Choir Recognition Sunday simply because music has a way of moving us on down the road. The Spirit moves in different ways and helps us to understand what it means to be a person of faith. It wasn't Pentecost Sunday, but it was in the season of Pentecost that 27 years ago, not in this parish, but in another place I served in Riverside, that on my right, about where Bill is sitting, the Grover family, or at least part of them, Norm Grover, the patriarch, Arlene, the matriarch, and their middle daughter, Rhonda, were there. And I was preaching out of, I think it was Luke 14, about Jesus healing on the Sabbath. And I was, at that time, preaching without notes. Occasionally I do that. I don't know whether it's age or my fear, but most of the time I'm using a manuscript. Anyways, I had my Bible open and I read the line about Jesus healing the sick. But what came out was that Jesus sealed the hick. And Norm laughed so hard he fell out of the pew. Spit came out of Rhonda, and Arlene just teared up. I just started the sermon, so I had two things, either pronounce the benediction or fight through it. And I fought through it. I don't remember much except the sight of the Grovers, who loved me dearly, by the way, but they just lost it. And I laughed a couple of seconds and then just moved on, and I didn't preach without notes for a decade. The Spirit causes us to do different things, sometimes to laugh, sometimes to cry, sometimes to be moved beyond measure by the simplest act of kindness. I need the name of an author here. Mary Dunham writes for USA Today Weekend, which appears in, at least in my daily news. And she wrote an article on the 30th of May focusing on John Bon Jovi. I confess he's just a little bit younger than me. His music has not appeared interesting to me, but he's a huge rock and roll star. The issue was what he does with his life, and what he has done along with his wife Dorothea is he's founded a foundation that is named JBJ, John Bon Jovi Soul Foundation. And in New Jersey, where he lives, he and his wife have founded a couple of businesses. The one I want to focus on is the Soul Kitchen. It's a place where people who are hungry can go to eat. And if they don't have money, they can work for their food. If they have money, it's a simple but nourishing meal. I think the cost is $10. And what I found interesting about it is his attitude is not to be the rock star taking picture opportunities with the customers. When it first got started, he was the best dishwasher they had, but now it's too popular, so he can't wash dishes anymore, and he's on the periphery. In the article, he doesn't claim to be religious, but he's obviously deeply spiritual because he's concerned with those on the margins of life. He and his wife do the very best they can to help people who have needs. If that's not the movement of the Spirit, I really don't know what is. Patty mentioned how music can take us different places. And I know that she and Norm saw Barry Gibb, I believe it was at the Bowl. I didn't go, but I read a review by Randall Roberts, who writes for the LA Times, and he said, he called the performance transcendent. He said, it's unlike anything I've seen, and he is the only living member of the Bee Gees, but apparently still has a real style about him. He performed for 2.5 hours. He certainly doesn't need to perform anymore. I'm sure he has plenty of money, but there's something inside him that calls him forward to share the gift of music with the world, who is still very interested in listening. And yes, I am a fan of the Bee Gees. I lived through the 70s. And so all of that music still touches me. I think it was Cokie Roberts who I watched interview Oprah Winfrey as Oprah was getting ready, and forgive me, I don't know if Maya Angelou's funeral is today or tomorrow or if it was yesterday, but I remember seeing Cokie Roberts interview Oprah, and with some emotion, Oprah was talking about, yes, she will be one of those who eulogizes Maya Angelou. And she was asked, well, what will you say? And she said, I don't know, but I will speak from my heart. And then she shared a piece of information that struck me, because I've always thought of Maya Angelou as rather erudite and ethereal and very thoughtful. And Oprah said, I learned something, that Maya was a huge country western fan, and her very favorite song was I Hope You Dance, which Leanne Womack popularized. It was written by Mark Sanders and Tia Sillers. And she said, I think it's going to be delightful because Leanne agreed to share this at the memorial. And I just want to read a couple of stanzas of it. I hope you never lose your sense of wonder. May you get your fill to eat, but always keep that hunger. May you never take a single breath for granted. God forbid love ever leave you empty-handed. I hope you still feel small when you stand beside the ocean. When one door closes, I hope one more opens. Promise me that you'll give faith fighting chance. And when you get the choice to sit it out or dance, I hope you dance. I hope you never fear the mountains in the distance, never settle for the path of least resistance. Living might mean taking chances, but they're worth taking. Loving might be a mistake, but it's worth making. Don't let some hell-bent heart leave you bitter. When you come close to selling out, reconsider. Give the heavens above more than just a passing glance, and when you get the chance to sit it out or dance, I hope you dance. I hope you dance. Friends, living in the church means you deal with things that are difficult, uplifting, beatific, and downright beastly. That's what it means. Otherwise, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? We have to be aware that stuff happens that really troubles us. A few years back, someone that many of you don't know, but some of you know well and love dearly, died. Norma Beli. She was on staff. And she was struck suddenly and quickly with brain cancer. And she refused treatment. And I know some struggled with that, but it didn't seem like it was worth it to her. Norma was an elegant, lovely woman, and I remember sitting bedside with her, holding her hand, and she reached out because I was terribly emotional, and she said, "Oh, honey, I'd go now if I could. We're just going to go through this. And you don't need to say anything. Just hold my hand and pray when you leave." I spent a lot of money on graduate school, and that was the best bedside chat I've ever had. I've had some great ones, but Norma was so graceful in a terrible, terrible time. That's what Pentecost is about. Your best, most lovely music that moves your soul, something that takes you and makes you cry as well. I hope you dance.
Thank you for listening to the First United Methodist Church podcast, which is recorded live every week at 4832 Tahunga Avenue in North Hollywood, California, and delivered by Dr. Joey McDonald. For more info on us, please check out nohofumc.com or find us on Facebook and Twitter under NoHoFUMC.